All right, everyone. So in this lecture, we are going to take a look at binding events to callback handlers, and we skipped a little bit of the packer because this portion here introduces the frame, and I just want to cover a bit about the frame before we look at the packing. Again, though, in this section here, we have a program. This has already been built for you in the example files called clicksexercises.py and clicks.py. But in this lecture, we're going to build it together just to showcase what's actually going on. So in this scenario, we are going to be creating this item called a frame, and a frame is actually going to be able to specify the width and height. So in our previous lectures, we were just looking at a basic widget and how that would work, but now we're going to actually be able to specify the sizes. So to get started, I'm going to import the frame from tkinter, and what I will also try to do for later, if we do need it, just to mimic the clicks.py file as well, I'm going to go ahead and just import show info. Now again, this general idea here, and I'm going to introduce a little bit of a new method that you'll see in the labs as well. It's going to be called make window. But in this scenario here, we're going to try to make a frame that is a width and the height of 100. And this frame is going to try to contain other widgets. In this scenario, we're looking at this one doesn't, but essentially what you can do is make a frame widget, and then your button widgets and your other label widgets can go inside of it. What we're going to do after we create this frame is we're going to try to bind an event to that frame. So to go ahead and get started, I wanted to showcase this type of new thing you'll be seeing called make window. This is a function that's not built into tkinter or anything. We just made it up, but it's in a lot of the labs and the assignments. You're going to see it. So for the time being, we're going to reference it here. And I'm going to create a frame widget, and I'm going to set it equal to frame. And let's go ahead and make our width 250 and the height 200. Now I'm going to go ahead and try to pack this frame, and then I'm going to try to make a main loop of this frame as well. And after I went ahead and I did all that, what I'm going to go ahead and do is at the bottom down here, excuse me, I'm going to make a window when I run my code. So you'll see here that, let me try to rerun it here. When I open this up, it's there. Let's go ahead and try to make this a bit bigger. So let's just say, why don't we do 550 and 500? And you'll see here that my frame's actually increasing in size quite a bit when I'm doing it, which is very useful for us. Now, to go ahead and try to figure out what we want to do here, in this scenario, we want to try to click in this grid, either with the left button or the right button, and we want to try to output the coordinates of this frame of where we're clicking. So to go ahead and get started with that type of logic, what we could do is take a look at our button logic right here. And you'll see that we are going to bind the event of left button clicks to a callback handler. So there's a few things that are going on here. First of all, we have a widget that's a frame, and we're going to use this method called .bind that is going to take in a pre-built event that tkinter has. In this scenario, it is button 1, which essentially means left click. And again, these are in the book and it's also in the documents, these other events. So there's loads of them. But the interesting thing here is the handler. So is handler built in? No, in fact, handler is something that is given, or excuse me, is something that we need to create, very similar to when we were creating the reply from before. So reply is the callback handler function. And again, essentially what this means, that terminology essentially means we are getting an event from this piece of code right here, and we need a function to handle that event. So to go ahead and get started, I'm going to paste in this type of binding method right here, but I also need to create my handler event. So I'm going to go ahead and create this handler event. And what I'm going to try to do now is I'm just going to print test for the time being. So let's see if this runs for us. And what I want to try to do is make something happen when I click somewhere. And you'll notice here that I'm getting this type of error where whenever I left click on my screen, I get, sorry, that's a lot of ones. Let me just do it once. Whenever I left click in my frame, I get this error that says handler takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. So what does this mean? Essentially what's happening is handler is getting a response from frame.bind button 1 when I click in my frame, and it needs to be able to have a parameter that holds in this error. This is very similar to when we were making our custom exceptions, how we set exception E and so forth. So what we need to do here is you can call this event. In the book, they call it E. Either way is fine. And so handler is going to take in an event, and I'm going to go ahead and try to click on it again. And you'll notice now whenever I click in my item here with my left mouse, I get my test printed. Now we want to go ahead and try to format what's going on. So I'm going to say you left clicked. And now what's going to happen is let's try to see if we can do something with this event. So I'm going to write event, and then if I put a dot and I tab it, oh, it might not show us all of them. Essentially, each of these events that are given to us, such as frame.bind button 1, have attributes. There are different types of events that will happen. In our scenario here for the button 1 event, what the attributes we have is the event's x coordinates and the event's y coordinates. So I'm going to try to run this now, and we'll see here that when I click on my screen, now I can see the coordinates that are popping up, the x and y coordinates. Great. And now essentially I have my event handler, and to make this even a bit more easy to see, I'm just going to go ahead and make a format because this is how the example code shows it. So what I'll say is I'm going to bind you left click at something like this. Cool. Now let's see if this is going to run for us. There we go. So now I get my X and Y coordinates of where I'm clicking. And again, what we want to do as well is we want to go ahead and try to see if we can bind the other event for us as well. It doesn't show us the right click event in there, but for our purposes, it is the button dash tree. So if I do button dash tree right here, now I'm binding it there. Now let's go ahead and try to see what happens here if I use the same handler for both of them. If I go ahead and I try left clicking, it seems to be working. And when I right click, it's also repeating the same piece of code. But you'll notice here that it's still saying left clicking even though I right click. So both of these events, I'm clicking left and right now. They're both repeating the same event handler, which is what we don't want. So what we can do here instead is create a new event handler. We could call the parameter event, and we can just toss in this same bit of code here, but I'll say you right clicked, and now instead of saying this is handler, I'm going to say this is handler 2. And now when I left click anywhere, I get the coordinates, and when I right click anywhere, I get these coordinates. So again, everyone, the purpose of this lecture really is to showcase, first of all, we have our frames that we can work with, and we also have these event handlers, which are really useful. So again, event handlers, this portion right here, this frame is going to say, hey, bind the event of button 1, which is a left click event, into this widget. And whenever this event happens in terms of this widget, run the function called handler, and the event is passed to that handler. Now this event can now be formatted and printed out, and we can do other things with it as well. To keep these a bit short and digestible, there is another example here called keysymbol.py. We'll look at that in the next lecture, and I also want to, in the next one, talk a bit about how the frame works and how we can use the pack with the frames as well. Again, try to see if you can make this code running. This code is the same as the clicks.py code, but again, it's important, and try to look at different events and functions like that and see if you can get them working.